This is an IOSH podcast.
Hi, my name is Greg Ward. I'm the Head of Commercial Development at IOSH Services Limited. This session, this podcast, is the fourth in the series, and it's designed to support and engage with our training providers. What we want to do is not only to support, but to produce some real good intelligence out of the sessions, perhaps some golden nuggets where you didn't realise that this is what IOSH do, and therefore how it might help you engage with your end user, your customer, or indeed learners in courses, etc. We've started our session thinking about the relationship, the direct relationship between our training network team and our training providers. We then thought in the second podcast to have conversations about the actual product itself. We talked about other areas like our training course approval, and we talked also about customer service and dealing with problems, with issues, with development, etc. The third session was to talk about intelligence. Where do we get our knowledge from? Where is the intelligence within the team, internally within IOSH, and therefore we have easy access to the latest thinking. And this session is about the external engagement. The idea about how do we talk about our strategic engagements, how do we interact with areas and organizations such as the United Nations Global Compact or the ILO, the World Health Organization, and corporate business. What does that look like, and how does that benefit the training provider? So I'm really pleased to have Ian and Alison in this session. We can have this conversation. So let's start with some introductions and we can go from there.
Thank you very much, Greg. Hello, my name is Ian McIntosh. I'm the Senior Business Development Manager for the IOSH for Business function. And we were launched to create a voice for business to align a language and a common narrative. And we work globally to support corporate clients and also feedback from those corporate clients, opportunities back into the training network. And I shall pass over to my other colleague, Alison.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Greg. My name's Alison Van Coolen. I'm the Strategic Relationship Business Manager here at IOSH. I work in the Strategic Engagement team alongside colleagues Greg, Ian, and the wider organisation. We work with a network of global partners that help us achieve our strategic aims. And like Ian, I look forward to speaking a little bit more about that shortly.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of the discussion, one thing I would say is I've spent, before joining IOSH, 14, 15 years as a member of a very large organization delivering training. So the focus and relationship that I had with IOSH was around our products and our engagement around to our corporate organizations. As I've been working for IOSH now for a number of years, the question has been always for me is, how do we best engage with the training providers? What is it that we can do in terms of taking this conversation a little bit more elevated, a little bit more strategic about how we're able then to discuss with business and indeed, with wider partners, stakeholders, etc. And the IOSH for Business element of that really addresses those particular questions. So let me pass to Ian and give a little bit more detail about how IOSH for Business operates and indeed how that impacts our training providers.
Thank you very much, Greg. So if we think back to the pandemic, everybody was scrabbling around and looking at their OSH sort of professionals within their business for support and for guidance. And this has elevated OSH to a different level where it's sitting at the sort of top table going forward. And all we're doing as IOSH for Business is we are talking to those businesses and being the voice of business to help businesses understand how OSH can impact their bottom line. So we talk about the whole dependency on OSH within a business from an organizational point of view and how it should be led from the top within their governance and their leadership, and how every business, it will look at what they're doing internally and it will filter it back down through the workforce. Now, what we will be doing is working with corporate clients globally. We will be talking to them about what their OSH strategy is, about how they can put their OSH strategy first. And then we will be an advisor to them. So there may be things they want to do from a cultural maturity point of view, but it may be just a basic awareness training. And that is where we link back to our training providers. So we will link back to our training provider team, our training network, and say, we're talking to this corporate client here in this part of the world, and they want to do some basic awareness training. Who can provide the training for it? And that's how we will link back to the training providers. But essentially what we are doing is being that voice for business, the corporate engagement side of it, where we will talk to people, understand their needs, their requirements, help them keep OSH elevated at the top table. So I think that gives us a little brief overview.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, is that what we're trying to do is to raise the bar right across the piece. That experience about being able to say, it's not always about looking backwards, about reducing accident rates, etc., in the rear view mirror, as it were. It's to be able to say to an organization that actually, by thinking about how OSH makes that more strategic impact, how its impact that it makes in terms of talent management, perhaps, or other areas like that, it's to make sure that OSH is really part of the planning stage of any organization. So from that, what we should be able to do is that through our training providers and their customers is that change the dial a little bit in terms of the dialogue and conversation they have, so that we aren't looking at it purely from a product point of view, but for those training providers to look at it broadly across a broader and a deeper discussion, around a solution that can be had. What I just wanted to sort of extend that conversation out to Alison with regards to what does that mean for for training providers with regards to the wider discussion, in the United Nations, for example.
Absolutely. And the work of our training providers is, I like to think it ties into what we do, as we set the groundwork on that. Through the work that we're doing with those partners around the world, we've really got a unique position in their eyes, where we're able to respond technically to the challenges that of the profession globally, but also be able to offer those core offerings around policy, research, and indeed our training and business advice. So in the eyes of our partners, IOSH really is that voice of the profession globally. So it's absolutely instrumental.
And what would it mean, if I'm as opposed to the OSH professional, each of our training providers, the deliverers, are going to be IOSH members. What does it mean for me as an individual? If I thought about that, how does the work that we do in Kenya or in Kazakhstan, how does that impact me personally?
Like never before, the work we're doing is really elevating the profession. It's really bringing the benefits of OSH to businesses, to communities, to economies to the fore, and it's setting the groundwork for the great work that Ian and his team do. So, like never before, OSH professionals are in demand.
So, and I'll just ask a subsequent question. If I think about, when we're talking about elevating OSH, if I think about how, or the involvement and connection that IOSH has made with its partners, who are the partners that we work alongside with?
We work alongside a whole network, a whole asteroid belt of partners, anything from UN entities who are focused on the conditions of workers, on that social position, the fairness of workers around the world. We work with partners who have a focus on individual sectors, for example, the World Health Organization with that focus on the healthcare sector. We work alongside those that look into the regulations and the financing of reconstruction of workplaces. So it is a whole network that all comes together to help us to represent and achieve our strategic goals. Okay,
so one of the questions I wanted to really press upon is that when we're talking to the training provider, the training network, is that this is a huge number of organizations who are providers, and they're very different. So what I really wanted to do is to say, how does IOSH for business engagement benefit different organizations, different sizes of training providers, and indeed the more controversial question of saying, well, isn't it perhaps competing in the same market, or in that sort of conflict of interest piece? I really want us to try and highlight and clarify what that is.
Yeah, no, thanks, Greg. So yeah, as we've already said, we are about elevating the OSH strategy within corporate organizations. We are talking to board level contacts, about leadership, about governance, etc. And it's about working out how we can best support them. Now, there will be strategic conversations that end up with different pieces of work, and some of the training providers will have an opportunity to talk to those companies. They may already be engaged with them, but through the conversations we're having, it's opening those companies' eyes to think, well, how do we look at this differently, and what opportunities will that provide? And then they will actually reach back out to their training providers to actually say, look, we've spoken to IOSH, we want to do this program, we want to look at it this way. We also have it where training providers come to us to say, we're talking to such and such a client, we have got to a point where we need some support from IOSH as members of IOSH. Can you support us? And we will support them by talking to those organizations, and again, getting some clarity around what they're actually looking to do, and going back to those training providers to say, well, we can support you here with this piece of work, and we can drive it forward, and we take it a step-by-step process. It's about meeting the customer's needs, and there will be some organizations that really do need that training provider support at all levels, and there'll be some where they just dip into parts of it and then come back out and just talk to IOSH about more strategic direction.
Okay, so I really want to pick up one particular area of of interest, and it's a thing that's discussed in our training network forum. I think this is a really it's a good piece for discussion. Is that actually we have a huge variety of training providers in terms of size, in terms of where they're engaged, what they deliver, etc. So one of the things that was interesting was the conversation about our new training network brochure. And quite a few points would say, well, actually, I only do part of it, so I'm not really that sure if I can use the brochure because it's illustrating the things that we don't do. And that was fine. And I think what I wanted to look at is to say, okay, well, how does working with IOSH for business fit? Where does that bit? How does a training provider benefit from IOSH for business if A, they only deliver training, or B, they do training and solutions? And the question therefore would be, well, isn't that a conflict of interest? What does that mean?
No, thank you, Greg. First of all, let's look at the market. There's 2.9 million people dying every year. It's a huge market that we should all be involved in. There's enough for everybody to do, both IOSH and any training provider that's out there. So what we're trying to do at IOSH for Business, as I've already said, is be that voice for business. So we will be speaking to businesses, and they, through the conversations, there may be just a need that is for awareness training, and there will be training providers there that's what their capacity can do. The size of their organization currently is that they are happy and comfortable providing those awareness courses, and where those opportunities come, we pass them back through to the training providers, and through to and basically tell our corporate clients to go look for a training provider that can assist them. But then you also have the next sort of level up, as I would call it, where people they can help with courses, they can help with certain solutions as well for the corporate client. And again, we will sit there and support those people. If a corporate client wants to go that way, that's no problem at all. And then we have the sort of next tier up, where people are looking at awareness, they're looking at solutions, but then they're looking at ongoing strategy and cultural maturity and tying it into potentially their own supply chain as well, which makes it a huge piece. And it could be global, it could be in many different countries around the world. And what IOSH for Business are doing is tying those pieces together and supporting those clients. So there may be a piece where in the Middle East, there is a training provider that will pick up part of that work. There may be a piece in Malaysia, for instance, where a training provider will pick up some work there. But as an overall strategy piece, IOSH for Business will almost conduct the orchestra to help tie all of the work together as they're part of their overall strategy.
Oh, I love that analogy of it. It's a great description of that piece. And naturally, what we also want to do as part of our engagement with our business leader forum is that we've got lots of training providers who are delivering great solutions around the world, of which, and we simply want to amplify that story. What we want to do is to articulate what it is where that is particularly effective. I think it's a really key point, is that actually there's lots for all of us to do and to get on with, and therefore I think in terms of a collaborative point of view is that the vehicle to do it is by elevating OSH in terms of what that looks and appears to be in terms of a strategic perspective. So if I pass to Alison in that point there, is that it's critical in order for organizations, be it training providers, IOSH, etc., to have a conversation with key critical corporate organizations. The extra element of that is our credibility about being part of a discussion at a really global level. So could you just talk to us a little bit more about what that looks like? And therefore, if I can try and tie that back down in terms of saying we are globally engaged, but what does that really mean in terms of perhaps the day-to-day perspective of the professional who is also a training provider? It might be a training provider of an organization of 3 people. How do we join those dots, if you like?
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. The work we do, work we do strategically, we really sit in that middle ground. We're that conduit between those high-level discussions up there and the people that are doing the people that are training, they are advising on the day-to-day work. So when we, like you say, we do work with a whole host of global organizations, and those conversations are happening around what people can be entitled to in their working lives, what a fair, decent workplace looks like, and we're able to translate those conversations. So like you say, when talking to training networks, when talking to business, we're able to translate those responsibilities, how they should be looking after their people and what that means. And likewise, we're then able to communicate back upwards good OSH, IOSH members, IOSH training, the provision that we're able to offer. That's what good OSH looks like. So we're listening, and we're able to be that middle ground. So the work you're explaining there, Ian, we're able to communicate to businesses. We're listening to what workers need to look out for. We're listening to what a good, healthy workplace looks like, and we're able to then translate that down. So
okay,
sorry, Greg, I just wanted to say there's a point that you mentioned earlier about the training providers are members. At the end of the day, they are members of IOSH, and within IOSH for Business, we've done a piece of work where we were actually reaching out to chartered members, chartered fellows across the globe, and we were asking them 2 simple questions, which is, one, what does IOSH mean to them professionally as a member, and what does IOSH for Business mean to them, and how could they see IOSH for Business supporting? And the feedback that we got was that it was this thing, some people were fearful, where they were training providers, of us competing in the same market space, but we also got the feedback of people were asked to speak to IOSH because of IOSH being IOSH, and they say it opens the doors for them as well, because we can have that engagement, same as Alison's team has the engagement at governmental level, etc. We have the engagement with these people, and we can develop strategies for people, and they will then look to their training providers to implement those strategies, whether it is pure awareness or it is a solution that they want to develop with their training provider. But it's about driving that conversation and actually initiating that conversation at a board level, because they will then make that a business strategic objective to say, this is what we're going to do with our OSH. We need to make this happen. And it drives it down through the business, and the business then, they will reach out. What do we do about our OSH training? We go to our training provider, and it's opening more conversations for those. So I just wanted to add that in about the way that we can engage with members, because we have this powerful 50,000 members across 130 countries. And we sometimes sit there and forget about how powerful that can be for opening doors and starting conversations and introductions, which can lead to opportunities for every type of training provider globally.
No, that's terrific. No, that's That's great. Okay, I mean, this is really, really great stuff. But what I want to do is I want to think a little bit about, what does the future look like? What does that mean for our training providers? How do we have a future focus? And what does that mean at a really strategic level? So if we were going to have almost like a wish list, if you like, or an ideal thing, well, Alison, what will be the message, if you like, to the training providers about what the future potentially holds, and yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think more so than ever, the opportunity is there for training providers, for OSH professionals to really make an impact on workplaces and for workers. Since last year's fundamental right on the formal adoption of a safe and healthy working environment, more so it's really at the forefront of people's minds. Certainly as an OSH professional, as a training provider, this is your opportunity to carry on the great work you're doing, but with that seal that you're really taking forward that adoption. So more so than ever, I think, know how important you are to businesses and all those great impacts that great OSH can have. More so than ever, run forward with it, I say.
That's terrific. That's great. Alice, the same question to Ian.
No, thank you, Greg. I mean, from our point of view in IOSH for Business, we will continue to be driving the conversation about OSH. And what I would sort of implore everybody that's watching this is that if you want to get in contact, it's a simple business@iosh.com. My team and I would be happy to have a conversation with you about how we can support you with some of your corporate clients, because there will be opportunities that we can both work on together. So I would just sort of urge you to just don't think of anything as a closed opportunity. Reach out to us and find out how IOSH for Business can support you.
That's a really good point, Ian. In particular, I just wanted to dwell on one thing, is that in terms of what the training provider does with an organisation, and whether your customer is a big or small, or whether indeed you are with a relatively small organisation or large, is that when you deliver training, IOSH training, and the revenue that is generated through the workbooks and certificates, that comes through IOSH Services Limited, and then that money is given to our charities, it's gifted to the charities in order that we invest that in terms of health and safety research. That's what happens. There's no shareholders, there's no other stakeholders. That is what, and the purpose of what we're doing for IOSH. So I think the connection between the strategic way in which we work, the connection to business, the connection to our training providers, and then the delivery as OSH professionals, delivering your message out in terms of your delegates, actually what you're doing is saving lives. When we refer back to the 2.9 figure from the UN, in terms of people who die on the basis of accidents and illness on a yearly basis, there's lots for us to do, and I think it's critical that we understand about that golden thread between us about making that difference. Okay, thanks, Ian and Alison. It's been a really, really good conversation, good discussion, thinking about things slightly differently and more broadly about how we can engage and support our training providers. And in fact, it's just been a really good way of concluding the 4 podcasts. So yeah, really pleased with that session. And most importantly, I just want to say thanks very much to our training providers. Thank you for listening to the sessions as we've delivered them. I hope you found them engaging and useful, and I hope there's something in there that'll prompt further discussion and conversation in terms of what we are trying to do between us, as a collaborative approach to try and drive a safe and healthy world of work. The most important thing about how we can drive change. So thank you once again. Thanks for listening, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Greg. I think my message to the training network and to OSH professionals is really take the opportunity like never before. And since the adoption in June 2022 by the International Labour Organization of OSH as a fundamental principle and right at work, I think it means occupational safety and health can no longer be considered an optional extra. Therefore, it's there's been great work to date, and I think my message would be take those opportunities and let's continue to achieve something great.